Hi guys, today we're going to talk about a pretty interesting subject, especially if you're part of the FGC, which stands for Fighting Game Community. This is not just for fighting games, but for most competitive or verse style games that require two players to go up against each other or more. Basically, what I want to talk about today is whether or not a certain style of fighting belongs in fighting games. Now, understand that I'm not saying that any style of fighting doesn't belong or anything should be banned or anything like that, or that fighting games should have in certain every style of fighting or whatnot. Every fighting game is unique and should be treated separately. But what I want to talk about is basically zoners, turtles, all kinds of stuff like that. The basic gist is that if you play fighting games nowadays, you'll notice a trend, especially in any sort of game that requires versus, and that is that every game is moving more and more towards a more aggressive style of gameplay. For instance, Street Fighter. Street Fighter has replaced its blocking from Street Fighter 4, where in Street Fighter 4, if you block, you take no damage unless it's a super or special, in which case you take chip damage, right? That means that you can literally block as much as you want. As long as you're blocking correctly, you'll never take damage from normal attacks. But in Street Fighter 5, they now have the stun gauge. You know, what that does is, that means that you can't play defensively as much anymore because you know, you'll get stunned and then your opponent gets an attack, meaning if they just wail on you all day and you block all day, eventually you're going to crack, right? And that's to influence a more aggressive style of fighting where people can't rely on playing defensively. They have to also be offensive. And this creates a more dynamic style of fighting. And I'm not saying that's wrong or anything like that. They've even tweaked certain characters in fighting games so that they can't rely on their defensive setups as much anymore. For instance, let's say Ryu, okay? Ryu in Street Fighter 5, he used to have a 3-frame startup SRK that had iframes, right? Now it doesn't have iframes. And what that means is you don't have as many defensive options anymore. Things to basically defend against an opponent's attack. You have to play more offensively, I suppose. But I mean, I could be wrong. SRK, I mean, obviously it's an attack, but it's an attack that your opponent needs to be aware of. You know what I mean? But when you take away iframes, it's less of something your opponent needs to be aware of. Anyway, now, understand anything I say here needs to be taken with a grain of salt. I'm not a high-ranked fighter or anything like that. You know, obviously, anybody who's really, really good at fighting games, you know, could probably tell. You know, and I feel like, you know, in fighting games, and not just fighting games, but in card games, everything is moving more aggressively. And it's almost as if the players themselves also want this. They want faster paced games. They don't want to play games that require a slower approach, more methodical approach to fighting. For instance, and this is really what got me thinking about this subject. But recently, I created a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and the technical term for this style of deck is called a control deck. Um, and if you ask anybody who's really, really good at Yu-Gi-Oh, most of the time they're going to tell you they do not like control decks. And the reason why is because they're slow, they're not about the offense, and they're very, very annoying. So basically, it's the Yu-Gi-Oh equivalent of a zoner. And what like my deck, for instance, what it does is when you attack, it sends the cards back to your hand, and when you place cards onto the field, you lose life points. Basically, it's a just say no kind of deck, and it's got glaring flaws, things that can beat it easily and whatnot. So a lot of people don't really like this style of deck, but the people who do play it, they have fun. But it's kind of weird because, like, I was checking out a video the other day, and the people who were talking about this style of card deck was that they frowned upon these people. They said that it was a poor choice, like that they can play if they want to, but they don't like these styles because, like, ultimately, if you think about it, the point of this deck is to say, no, you can't do your cool, flashy, awesome combos so that you can win the match quick. Instead, you have to follow my pace, right? And that's the problem, because their deck's designed to do a certain thing. For instance, and I understand, like, I'm not a Yu-Gi-Oh expert either, but for instance, I've wanted to make what is the equivalent of a Power Ranger deck, Super Quant deck, and the point of the Super Quant deck is you get out a Power Ranger, the Power Ranger gets out another Power Ranger, and those Power Rangers get out Power Rangers, and then eventually those Power Rangers turn into Zords, and those Zords turn into the Megazord, and then you attack and win. And you do that, and you can do that in like the first turn kind of thing. But its weakness is actually control decks. There's a card called Lose One Turn. What it does is when you special summon a card, it goes in defense position and its effect is negated, right? And so instead of like getting out tons of Power Rangers and eventually getting out the Megazord, it says no, right? And that's the thing. It's like the people who play it, they literally just want to see their really cool card come out and put up a good fight, And there's something to be said about that. It's not a bad thing to have fun, show off your really cool combos and whatnot, but also it needs to be said that when you are playing a game that's competitive or whatnot, that playing against people who slow you down and whatnot teaches you as a player to be not necessarily more creative, but learn new styles of playing, or to prepare for every situation. In Yu-Gi-Oh, you can't really change your style of play based off of the opponent's deck. You have 15 cards to switch out with sometimes, in between matches, but really, it's not really much you can do. You can create a deck that happens to have backup plans, but then that ruins your actual plan. So, but this allows you to build more unique decks that plans for certain things, right? But let's grab another example real quick, okay? Now, I also like StarCraft, and in StarCraft we have a term for the human race, and it's called the Turtle Terran, right? And what it is you build your base, build defenses for your base. Eventually, you max out your army, and then you march across the map and destroy your opponent. And like, the problem with this is that it's super slow. It takes a long time, and then the opponent doesn't want to really wait that long. You'd rather just end the match. If he's gonna win, he's gonna win, and if he's gonna lose, he's gonna lose. Yeah. But not to say that people don't play hour-long matches on this game, but when it comes to the more defensive style of playing, they find it very boring. Like for instance, the Zerg race. If you were to play the Zerg more defensively, people would say, well, that's not really what they're made for, which is true. But what if you did? What if you played a different race in a more defensive style, and then ended up winning because you did so or whatnot. Playing these styles and whatnot, and like Terrans don't always go turtle, by the way. You can go mass marine and all kinds of stuff, but these styles allow you to learn new concepts of strategy. For instance, taking the Turtle Terran style and adapting it to Zerg or Protoss, or certain methods that you would do during Turtle Terran, taking those and incorporating them into your other tactics and whatnot. These things, they breed creativity. But like another style of character that fits these descriptions are the zoners. You got Dulcine right here, this guy, and he's the classic zoner. Ever since Street Fighter 2, he's been out, and what his thing is he moves so slowly, and but all his attacks reach halfway across the screen, and he's very good at keeping away from you, and that's the style. It's he deals damage by staying away from you, and it directly contradicts the rushdown style, where these characters try to get in your face, right? And then you got Zangief right there. He's the opposite. He's like a nightmare for rushdown characters, right? Where Zangief, he is slow, defensive, but if you get in his face, you will regret it, right? And that's the opposite of rushdown characters. Characters such as I don't remember the guy's name, but there's a guy who throws tornadoes in Street Fighter 5. His whole thing is getting in your face. I feel like that guy has like a disadvantage versus Zangief players, because except for like when he throws out his super, I guess, but like his thing is, even though he can rush all around the field and jump and flip and all this other stuff, he's mostly what I feel is a melee fighter, and he can't really get in and do his melee stuff against someone like Zangief, whose whole point is to also get in your face, But you have all these like very defensive or like annoying styles, and people find that they are how do I explain? They're annoying, right? But do they belong in fighting games, right? So one more style, which you probably would know if you ever played Magic the Gathering. There is what is called the blue style, which basically just says no, right? And this is literally the embodiment of what I would say is like annoying to most fighters. What they do is they slow you down. They're super defensive, and all they do is say, no, you can't do that thing, right? A lot of people hate these styles of decks because they want to get out 50 monsters, or they want to get out big scorching monsters or whatnot, and win the match. But then blue deck right here, like with this card right here, Mana Leak, it basically says, no, you can't, right? If you want to do this thing you want to do, you're gonna have to pay for it, And I think that's awesome. I think that's cool. I think that belongs in games. Like, what happens when you fill a game with nothing but like rushdown characters like Star Fox here? What? Excuse me. What happens when all the fighters are the exact same style? Not to say that that's bad or anything. Dive Kick practically had nothing but the exact same character, but it had slight variations of those characters. Like, some people could jump higher, some people could dive faster, some people dive weird, right? But the thing is, when you take out these type of fighting styles, the zoners, the tank characters, the defensive players, the just say no things, take out a mass amount of variety in these fighting games or competitive games, and it takes away a certain level of creativity, a certain level of art, if you think about it. Because what you're essentially saying is that I feel that this game only needs to have this in it or whatnot, which is not cool, honestly. Obviously, the games are built more towards aggressive style characters or players. For instance, the top tier characters in Street Fighter V are aggressive characters. The person who's won Evo almost every year for the past several years, I don't think he won this year, but freaking the guy plays Akuma. He's won 3 times in like the past 6 years. I think the best character in Smash Brothers is Star Fox. The best style of deck in Magic the Gathering, sometimes, I would say, is probably the red deck. It's fast, it's aggressive, it's made to win in a couple turns. The best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are aggressive, fast decks that get out really big monsters and clear the other person's board in 1 turn. You know, the top race in StarCraft right now is the Zerg race. Well, they've won just about every competition, you know, and there's something to be said about that. Does that mean that people don't play these defensive styles as much? Do people like aggressive styles more? I mean, what do you feel? Do you feel that we need these styles? We need more people to play these styles? Or do you think maybe it's a good thing we're heading more aggressive? Anyway, guys, if y'all like this video, please subscribe to Nerd Steel channel, like this video, and of course, give me comments. I'll see you later, okay?